Welcome everyone to the Greater Des Moines Partnership's Public Policy Issue Forum on Community Placemaking. I'm Andrea Woodard, the lead government affairs here at the partnership, and we are excited to host our third Public Policy Issue Forum of the year. I would ask that if you're not already, we are in a webinar format versus meetings, so there may be some different functions depending on what you're most comfortable with, and so bear with us as we navigate the webinar function. We also typically use meeting, but we're going to go with it. And if you're not already, please put yourself on mute, and then I will encourage everyone to enter any questions you would have from the beginning and through the end in the chat. As we have up here on the screen, we are doing these public policy issue forums every other month, and so you have the dates and the topics. So we'll be sharing more information on each of these as we finalize details, but mark your calendar for our three other public policy issue forums in 2021. And our goal of these issue forums has been to educate a broad audience so that more people understand those issues and can advocate to our elected officials. Every other, so far we've covered childcare and broadband up to this point. So we're looking forward to hearing a little bit more about community placemaking today. And as we always do with our public policy issue forums and policy events, is we'd like to remind everyone of the partnership's civility pledge. The partnership supports the Drake University's Ray Center's Show Some Respect campaign. And and with that, and so we always like to remind everyone of the importance of civility in our events. Advancing meaningful conversation requires respect. And at the partnership, we urge all Iowans to be courteous as they express their opinions about issues. Together, we can have the tough conversations in a respectful way and find common ground solutions. And I want to quickly then touch on community placemaking, and why is that one of the topics that we want to cover. Community placemaking was identified back last fall as one of our top featured priorities for our 2021 state legislative agenda. There have been conversations about a Vision Iowa 2.0 program, or really just how are we investing dollars into creating place. And we'll talk more about what community placemaking means. Here up on the screen, you'll see our sort of featured priority definition and what we supported in the 2021 legislative session. As we're entering into the summer and fall months, we'll be looking at what we want to do in 2022. So this is a great opportunity to learn more about what's currently being done on the ground. And with that, I will turn it over to our experts. I'd like to introduce Bethany Wilcoxon, Senior Advisor with McClure Engineering Company. Bethany serves in this role. She leads the community development team, developing and guiding cross-discipline planning opportunities that enhance the quality of life in upper Midwest communities. She previously led the Imagine Iowa Great Lakes Initiative, a multi-million dollar, multi-community beautification effort for Iowa's top tourist area. Bethany is originally from Atlantic, is a graduate of Iowa State University's Community and Regional Planning Program, and had previously led the development of the Tomorrow Plan, a $3.1 million regional initiative to advance sustainability in Greater Des Moines, and then transitioned to Director of Capital Crossroads, the regional vision plan for Central Iowa, where I had the pleasure of working with her and sharing a cue ball for a little while. Bethany's passion for the community carries over to her volunteer activities. She currently serves on Iowa State University College of Design Dean's Advancement Council, the Governor's Empower Rural Iowa Initiative, and the Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation, as well as the Clive Community Foundation as well. She previously served on the Great Outdoors Foundation Board, the Jester Park Nature Center, Capital Campaign Team, and the Drake Neighborhood Association Board, among many other things that Bethany's done for the community. And so with that, Bethany, I'm going to turn it to you to take us through our panel today. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrea. Glad to be with the group today and chat placemaking. I have the honor of introducing our esteemed panelists. I've had the pleasure of working with all of them over the years, so great to be with all of you today. First, Sally Dix is the Executive Director of Bravo Greater Des Moines, a nonprofit organization that leverages community resources to maximize the impact of arts, culture, and heritage to advance regional priorities. Primary function of Bravo is to strategically invest in regional cultural organizations to elevate and enrich a vibrant Greater Des Moines. In addition, Bravo leads community efforts to ensure that arts and culture are integral to advancing regional priorities. Sally, good to see you today. Since Tom Hadden was appointed City Manager of West Des Moines in May of 2014, he has been instrumental in public infrastructure improvements and additions, including the Mid-American Energy Recplex, the Jamie Hurd Amphitheater, the Raccoon River Park Boathouse, Veterans Parkway, a new public services facility, increasing the level of police and fire personnel, expansion of the Human Rights Commission, and 6 of the best years for West Des Moines building permit valuations. Welcome, Tom. And finally, Rachael Kinnick, who oversees the Grinnell Area Chamber of Commerce's daily operations and works with local and regional stakeholders to advocate on behalf of the Grinnell community. She works with the board of directors to set the strategic priorities for the organization and represents Grinnell on a variety of local and regional organizations' board of directors, including Unity Point Health, Grinnell Regional Medical Center, Link Grinnell, Grinnell United Way, and the Iowa Association of Chambers of Commerce. Rachael is passionate about supporting small businesses and strives to engage the organization in community development efforts to ensure Grinnell is a unique place to live, work, learn, and play. So with that, I have a few prepared questions for the panel, and then we'll open it up to the audience. As a reminder, if you have a question for one or more of the panelists, please pop those in the chat and we'll get to as many questions as we possibly can. So I'd like to give each of our panelists an opportunity to offer a few opening remarks and to answer the question, how do you define placemaking and what do you consider to be your role in placemaking in your community or in the region? So Sally, let's start with you and then we'll jump to Rachael and then to Tom.
Great, Bethany, thanks so much, and thanks for having me. Certainly not an expert in placemaking, but delighted to be part of the conversation. Placemaking, I actually looked it up because there are specific definitions to placemaking. It's not entirely a subjective concept. And the definition that I liked the best that I found out is placemaking is the process of engaging people to collectively reimagine and reinvent public spaces as the heart of every community. And there are a lot of things I liked about that, but I like it as a concept that it's not just constructing an amazing building or designing a really interesting plaza, but those certainly could be outcomes. But what I really particularly liked about that is that placemaking is really about people. Placemaking is really about dialogue with people who use and share a place and then imagine it holistically, not as just an independent, a street over here or a park over here, but imagine a place as a really integrated space. And then including those people's voices in reimagining a place or putting something together. And when it's done right, it not only yields more amazing spaces, but also stronger community connections between people and the places that they value. And ultimately, that's the essence of community, right? Is when you have people coming together with places, that's how community really is built. So my role in placemaking at Bravo is to connect arts and culture with all of the region's priorities. And there isn't a single thing that we want to accomplish in Greater Des Moines that isn't made stronger by placemaking, by more people having more value in more places. Bravo isn't always leading the work, but we are frequently a funder and a partner and really excited about opportunities to connect people to the places that they value.
Excellent. Thank you, Sally. Rachael, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I would echo much of what Sally just described. I think placemaking is creating a place where people want to be, whether that's intentional or unintentional sometimes. I think that it's a place or it's creating that engagement with others and enjoying community. Sometimes, that placemaking is intentional and sometimes it's unexpected. I think we see that from time to time where things just happen and those of us who are actively working on pulling things together, say, oh, we should follow that lead because that's clearly working. And so we should, amplify that a little bit more. So I think that placemaking is, like I said, really just creating a place where people want to be, where people want to gather, where they want to engage with one another, to enjoy each other's company. And now that we're getting a little bit more post-pandemic, those things are starting to happen again, which is equally exciting. I think that placemaking can utilize a number of different things, whether, to Sally's point, it's a building or it's public art or it's just outdoor space and activities. And simply is that just a place to engage community in those spaces. Our role as it relates to placemaking and as it relates to many projects and initiatives is helping connect the dots. It depends on the group and organization that we're working with, oftentimes, what our role really is. We can definitely step in and be the visionary if needed. We can be a resource. We can be a connector. Sometimes we're just support for the project, being that vocal voice for our community and sharing why we feel this particular project is important to our community. So I would say that our role really varies depending on the project and depending on who the players are and what our role needs to be. But happy to step in and help play any of those roles if and when necessary.
Absolutely. Being flexible is key. Tom, what are your thoughts on placemaking overall?
Are you going to put that PowerPoint up?
Yes, I think, Ryan, you have those slides? There we go.
Right, thank you. Okay, let's start with soon after I got here, you can go to the next slide, Ryan, or whoever. When I started here, we were looking at West Des Moines, and West Des Moines has a lot going for it as a community. So as a city manager, and I thought we need to challenge ourselves to say, how do you stay good? How do you stay top notch and competitive? It's not like competitive, we're as a part of a region here that we want to be central Iowa and Iowa, but we're competitive with cities and areas all over the country. So we got a futurist, and we got people from all walks of life in our community and leaders. And we said, let's do some scenario planning and let's come up with a game plan. And so some of the scenario planning was actually close to the pandemic. It didn't involve a pandemic, but involved basically retail going all online and losing a lot of that the type of in-store type business and those types of things, which helped us think. We also listened to our large business leaders or small business leaders. And so here's what kind of came up with a game plan. And I don't think we knew it at the time, but what it translates to is a help making a place, great place to people who want to work and live. We want to be strong, but the quality of life was a big one. And that's again, where people want to be and gather. And how do we be sustainable? And the other thing was technology. We've got a big program going on, putting conduits in our right-of-ways all across the city so people can have access to high-speed internet. Because again, that came up in 2016 plan, but it was obviously very important during the pandemics. So next, and to keep the world's best workforce, or retain and attract the world's best workforce, which includes inclusion and being open to people with different walks of life. Okay, Ryan. Just sometimes places just are places where they want to be, and it was happened organically. The Jordan Creek Mall occurred. People want to be there. It was a very nice amenity, and thankfully it's weathered the storm. They're still doing really well, and people want to go there. And still people, in spite of using Amazon, and so easy to click and point and click and order, they still want to get out among people and feel things and see things. And then our trails, we have Holiday Park, which we've invested millions of dollars in. That was like a gem for us, because we thought, man, this thing's attracting people all the time for weekends and tournaments, and we kind of didn't realize what an economic powerhouse that those ball fields were. Okay, next slide. Another thing that came out of this whole planning process, and we went to the local option sales tax to get the voters to vote for that, was the 5 Water Project. And what that does is really, as it says, preserving green space, outdoor recreation, and it helps our economy by people attracting here, and visitor attraction, but it's a lot for our people who live here also. And if you look at, we're really taking our stream and river corridors seriously for environmentally, plus the trails and systems connecting people love them and love to recreate on them. Next slide. Current examples of we've invested millions of dollars in Valley Junction as far as infrastructure and some incentives. Things are happening there. That's a place where people want to be, similar to East Village, and it has similar dynamics. It's not as large, but there's been a lot of history there, and I think a lot of good things are happening there. So that's wonderful. We want to keep our history and our older side part of our community vibrant. We're integrating arts into all over our city in projects on even when you're going under bikeways, underneath the roadways, and you see the flags on Veterans Parkway as a salute to our veterans. So we're trying to be thoughtful in that aspect also. Next slide. Two big projects we have right now is Recplex, South Grand Avenue. It's a public-private partnership that we work with Mid-American Energy, Hy-Vee, and other donors. And we're going to build a very unique facility that has 2 sheets of ice, 100,000 feet of turf inside, 4 courts, basketball courts, 8 volleyball courts within that. And so and then there's 3 lighted turf fields outside. It gives us flexible space. We think there's going to be very active in drawing regional tournaments and for our region itself for people to recreate and grow their respective sports like hockey. And then Plant the Speed, again, is bringing high-speed internet conduits throughout the city. So competition will come to bear and give people options for that. Is the next one. And a couple others that have happened this last year during the COVID, the pandemic, we opened Jamie Hurd Amphitheater, which is a public-private partnership with Richard Hurd and the city. And it's even in spite of the temperatures and stuff, there's activity there just about every night. And then we opened a boathouse on the Blue Heron Lake at Raccoon River Park, which opened very late in the season, but it was very popular to the start. So those are, again, amenities which attract people, and people want to go there and gather and especially listen to music or be on the water and enjoy the weather and the water. Do I have any more? Is that it?
I think that may be it. But Tom, can you talk a little bit more? You touched on it, but can you dive a little deeper into how placemaking has changed over time and how you've seen that approach change from your time with the city or even in past roles? And then Rachael and Sally, I'd like you to consider the same questions.
I think it's changing. We're being much more intentional now and strategic. It's just not something's going to happen and hope for the best. We take surveys every 2 years of our people. We listen, we have groups with a business group that we listen to quarterly. So we have a really good outreach program to say we want to be kind of ahead of the curve in listening. So instead of just having something and building something and hoping it works, we really listen to them and we're listening to amenities that the people want. And I think they will go and it will attract them and make our community better place to live.
Yeah, and Sally, that goes back to what you kicked us off with about listening and being really people-centered. So any additional thoughts about how you've seen placemaking change over time?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts about that. One, I think is definitely that interaction that Tom's alluding to, the shifting role between like a developer and a planner who might historically have come in and seen a parcel and said, this is what I'm going to do in this space. And now it's a little bit more interactive and hopefully in, best case scenario, it's more conversational and there's more opportunity for community to weigh in and make sure that space or that parcel is going to be used to bring a vision to life that's meaningful to the people who ultimately are going to be using it. I think also there's a shift in the form and function balance. I think there was a time, and I'll use roads as an example, right? You're going to build the shortest distance between here and there, and however many cars you can get on that road, that's the plan. I think that we're shifting that value proposition a little bit to say, there are some amazing things that we can do as a community. But if they're just super efficient, they may not speak to the true needs of the people that you're trying to attract. And so trying to trying to find that balance between form and function. Those are two things that I am seeing shift as time goes by.
Absolutely. Rachael, your thoughts on how placemaking's changed over time?
Yeah, well, I would say, when I started in this role, I don't know that placemaking was a common word that we even talked about, or very many of us, called what we were doing placemaking. And certainly now is a very different time. It's a buzzword as we're hearing and seeing all over the place. But in many ways, I think that's a really great thing, because it's drawn new attention to the work that we're doing, and to engaging a whole new group of people and individuals in helping create those spaces. And I think that that's something that is just really important. As we look at this, that placemaking historically were cities and economic developers and developers, to Sally's point, finding a piece of land and saying, here's what we're going to do. This is it. And in today's day and age, it's more about that engagement and that involvement in community members, and community members in many cases actually driving the content and what that placemaking outcome will look like in the future. And I think that that's just really an incredible shift in placemaking. I think that it's allowed communities to be more engaged, to feel more heard in those roles. But it's also, it builds in usership, right? So all of the projects that we're doing all of a sudden have a whole group of people and individuals who are passionate about that work, who have been a part of it. And so they're going to be the champions for the ultimate success of that placemaking for years and years to come.
Yeah, and on that note, I would say community pride as well. People take ownership of these. Rachael, I want to come back to you though to talk another facet of placemaking, looking at it as an economic development tool. In what ways do you think we can better use economic development programs, policies, or tools to further creative placemaking efforts in Grinnell, in Greater Des Moines? Tom and Sally, you're on notice. Same question coming for you momentarily.
Yeah, well, again, I think, Debbie Durham said recently, the future of economic development must include an emphasis on placemaking economic development. And historically, economic development was roads and infrastructure and buildings specifically. And I think that we have a whole new approach, right, to economic development and what that looks like, and the tools that are in our tool belt with that. So I think that, pre-pandemic, a lot of things were crucial as it related to placemaking. Those were things that people wanted to see, and I think that it's actually crucial now that we're kind of moving past the pandemic. Right? People have different perspectives. They feel that they can truly live anywhere, and they can in many instances. And so a lot of these placemaking efforts will become crucial in retaining our current population as well as attracting new. And so as we talk about this as an economic development tool, it really is. People are looking for cool spaces to be, involved in their community, to be able to engage in their community, and to actually be able to help build some of these items and efforts. People want to live in vibrant places with unique features. And so, I think it's just critical from an economic development standpoint to make sure that we're thinking about those items as that retention and retraction tool in terms of our people, right? And getting more people to our areas. So in terms of policy and procedure, I think Tom hit it on the head. Public-private partnership is so key in all of this work. And I think is something that as we move forward, we'll just continue to see more and more of. And I hope that that's something that comes out of the 2022 legislative cycle, is just some increased opportunities for public-private partnership to help make some of these placemaking efforts happen. I think that oftentimes when we talk about placemaking, people think big projects, right? They think of the $3 to $5 million projects and higher. And that's clearly placemaking, and those things take a lot of tools in the economic development tool belt, if you will. But I think that there are a lot of things that can be more basic, more low key, and things that can be done in a very cost-effective manner. For smaller communities, perhaps like Grinnell is a town of 9,000. We don't have readily available $3 to $5 million projects just lined up after one another, right? So we have to be a little bit more creative in our economic development placemaking efforts. So So that's certainly something that I think is important to keep in mind too. In terms of some of the specific funding, there's just so many great opportunities that already exist in the state. And again, because placemaking is becoming more common, if you will, across the state and the country, there are a lot of great opportunities at the state level as well as at the federal level, and dollars that are supporting specific placemaking efforts. So, as we're talking about some of those really basic ones, like the Keep Iowa Beautiful grant is a great entry level for communities or individuals who are wanting to do a mural or something to that effect, and again, spans the entire state. Of course, the Iowa Great Places funding and all of the opportunities that go along with that. I mean, the state has just done so much as it relates to arts and culture, and placemaking is a huge component of that. More recently, I just had an email from the Realtor Association that is getting involved in placemaking a little bit more. So there are lots and lots of different opportunities, I think, from a funding mechanism and standpoint out there, and again, just more readily so than maybe what we've seen in the past.
Excellent. Some great ideas there. Tom, what would you add as far as programs or policies or tools that can support placemaking in our communities?
Well, first of all, your elected officials or your community have to support it, or it doesn't happen. And fortunately, the elected officials of West Des Moines have been looking down the road and having a bigger vision. And especially when you tie it to, we have designated part of the local option sales tax to kind of feed that, and then the public-private partnership. So that's huge. The state has there's grants for that, but I think locally you can only control so much, as we find out now. And so what we can do locally is really important, and then we go out from there if the county wants to contribute, or the state. So that's how we kind of look at that aspect of it, and hopefully we keep. I think it's so important, and for our leaders to understand. I think they see it. It's obvious because their constituents love it. When you do a survey, they like what was being provided.
Absolutely. Sally, your thoughts from Bravo's perspective?
Yeah, I just was gonna. I'm not sure actually that placemaking as an economic development case is a really tough one to make, to tell you the truth. And I think this is part of the evolution over time. There was 10 years ago, placemaking wasn't a conversation, but now I think there's so much appetite for it that it almost has sometimes the opposite effect. You have to be really mindful about the places that you're going. It can be such an economic development tool. In some cases, that economic values go up so fast that the original community that was intended to be served by the place can ultimately end up being displaced because of popularity or success. And I just think that's an interesting policy thing to note. Certainly there are ways to build in accommodations for that, and we wouldn't want to stifle development or the economic focus. But again, I want to go back to placemaking being about people and making sure that we are also thinking about both sides of that coin. It's not one or the other. It has to be an and. I think there are lots of great examples of what other communities have done in terms of, how can we leverage policies or opportunities here. I think there are lots of great examples of what other communities have done, as long as we're careful about not just saying, oh, they did this over in this community, let's do it here. You have to make sure that it works and that it translates and that it's truly meeting a need that's specific to our community here. And I have to say, I think we have a once in a generation opportunity to really affect placemaking with the American Rescue Plan funding. There is so much potential to achieve so many of the objectives that we've talked about on this call and in conversations with others, supporting arts and culture, supporting quality of life. You want to talk about a policy opportunity, the ARP, we want to make sure we're having really good conversations about how placemaking can be a part of those investments.
Yeah, Sally, I agree your excitement. I think there's just so much opportunity there. And getting to your comment about inclusion, having that be such a key piece of the American Rescue Plan as well. So very excited to see that. But I want to go back a little bit more to some of your comments about how do we look at all of this from a larger community impact sense. Excuse me. So can you give us an example, Sally, of a placemaking project that Bravo has supported and the role that Bravo has played in seeing that project through to fruition?
Absolutely. So I want to be clear that Bravo is mostly a funder. So I'm always a little reluctant to bring up things that we're supporting because they are generally being led by others and I don't want to take credit for it. But there are a couple of things that we're doing right now that I think are specific examples of the ways placemaking can come to life. And one is Bravo is working with Invest DSM to embed an artist in residence to support their neighborhood revitalization efforts. And for those of you that don't know, Invest DSM is a collaboration between Des Moines and Polk County to strengthen some middle neighborhoods and working in coordination with local residents and stakeholders and hopefully generating enthusiasm and support in those neighborhoods for to spur home investment. So the artist in residence that we are working with is focused on working with the community in one of those special investment districts to help utilize art as a way to develop that sense of place and identity. The neighborhood they're working in is actually the Dogtown Business District, and it's really been enthusiastically received not only by the businesses, but also by residents in the community that, Bethany, I think you said this, have pride of place and really want their neighborhood and their space to stand out and be unique and special. So it's going to end up, the artist in residence has been there for a while. COVID's made it a little weird, but she's been doing fantastic, and it's going to end up with a series of block parties and some street painting and some neighborhood engagement that I think is going to be really exciting to create some dialogue and some community connections that so many people are craving. We're also working on an exciting project with DART. This is something that we're looking to elevate bus shelters into public art pieces. A lot of times people don't see the intersection between art and economic development or art and transportation. So we're really fortunate to be working with our partners at DART to create community around infrastructure in a new way, in a very visible way. Some of these have already actually been installed, but they're going to go out all over the region. Again, Bravo is primarily a funder, but working collaboratively with DART to make sure that these projects continue to elevate conversations. One of Bravo's core tenets, we work up against the regional cultural assessment that was completed in 2017. And one of the 4 priorities that came out of that is our community. And when I say our community, I mean the region, really wants more everyday, everywhere art. In addition to the opportunity to buy a ticket to something or schedule a trip with your family to a museum or an art center or a zoo, people also just want more art around them more times. And so it's really exciting to see both the Invest DSM project and the DART project and some other ones that we have going on, really elevating that concept of more art in more places for more people.
Love it. Rachael, can you point to a placemaking project in Grinnell?
Yeah, so we actually have a couple, and again, I want to just reemphasize that placemaking can be big or small. So, you know, for us, we are serving in a support role for our veterans building, which is looking at doing an artist in residency program, a veterans focused artist in residency program. And so we are very much being a support of that. We are excited about that project and hope to see that come to fruition in the very near future. It's at the focal point of our Central Park, which has been redone within the last few years, which was again a big placemaking effort for our community, is now a focal point of the community, and was one of those bigger scale, $3.5 to $4 million projects. But I would say, you know, we're also actively leading some efforts with public art, with murals specifically in our community, as well as our outdoor dining streetery project. So we, again, really are looking at and getting engagement from our community and hearing the feedback that they have and the places that they want to be, that they want to engage with. And what we heard them say loud and clear was outdoor dining. We as a community don't have a lot of outdoor dining options. And so we have been a champion of that and are really leading the effort to help make sure that not only that our businesses have that additional income, right, from a pandemic standpoint, but that it also is dual purpose and that it's serving as those placemaking spaces as well. So we're excited that they're actually just getting up and running today. So very exciting and timely as it relates to this discussion.
So it sounds like we'll all have to make our way over to Grinnell.
Absolutely.
Tom, I know you touched on several projects, but are there any other projects in West Des Moines that you'd like to highlight today?
Well, I want to go back to the Recplex. It's getting close to open, and I want to throw some other items in there that we've added. I mean, again, we've gone and looked at a lot of facilities. I've traveled. My youngest son is in the basketball AU world, and so I've seen a lot of them, good and bad. So, but we've added an esports room. So, you know, parents, if their kids can go in there play, and there could be tournaments or there can be other things. It's 3,000 square feet. So it's pretty significant. And again, the places we're using we've got it wired to the nth degree, so you can go in and people want to be on their various pieces of equipment, electronics, they can do that. We have DMU involved with it. DMU is going to be building a campus down the street just a little bit. So they're going to have a rehab and a sports enhancement type center right in the facility. So we're really trying to do state-of-the-art things, make it more comfortable for people to sit. You can rent rooms to have your birthday parties or other events there. And so this is, and we had in mind also, because it's funding, some of it, the funding is coming from hotel motel tax, that we have a lot of hotels and restaurants in the city of West Des Moines. And this is also another way when people are coming from out of town to keep using those businesses. So that we're really trying to make it a special place and invested significant funding in it with partnerships. We've got contributors, major contributors, along with some grants. So that's a project that we're trying to finally get across the finish line through building through COVID and all the kinds of things that happened during the this last year and a half or so. But that's something special for us, and I can't wait till people are able to see what it brings to the Greater Des Moines area.
Absolutely. And I love hearing all of these examples. I think they really do a nice job of summarizing a lot of our discussion so far. So those public-private partnerships, it's listening to the needs of the community and really understanding the various scales of what placemaking can be. So I want to jump to another question that we've dipped our toe into of how can we address the equity gaps in the creative placemaking process? And Sally, you've touched on this a little with the engagement piece. But can we dive into that a little bit more? I don't know who wants to start that. If Sally, if you want to kick off sort of where you left off, and then Rachel and Tom will go to you.
Yeah, placemaking is a people-based, relationship-centric process, and there aren't really any shortcuts. And I get asked questions like this a lot. There aren't really any shortcuts. If you want to engage with a community, you have to engage with the community, and you have to invest the time and the effort, and you have to be intentional, and there has to be a trust-based relationship. You can't just jump into a space and say, hey, we have some money and we thought we wanted to do a mural, and how do you feel about that? That's not placemaking. And so I think that honestly, there's some ground to be made up. I think that has been an approach that's been used. And so I think there's some ground to be made up and some relationships to be built. But it requires, this work requires a genuine commitment to listening and responding. You can't just hear it and go ahead and put in the mural you were going to put in the first place. You have to listen, you have to pay attention, you have to be willing to respond, and you have to be of and for the community that you're representing. And so no easy answer, but I think starting from that place is probably my best insight.
Tom, Rachel, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would absolutely echo that. I think, making sure that everyone is in a part of the conversation and is a part of those, whether it be focus groups or surveying or however you intend to reach the community, making sure that you're going to, the places that people go to naturally already, right? Go to the schools, go to the food banks, go to the parks, engage with people where they are currently and ask them what they would like in future planning, I think is so important. But I think that Sally touched it, incredibly important too, is that you have to listen. You have to actually not just hear it, but listen to it and to account that into your future planning. And the other piece that I think is something that, I'll be honest, we struggle with from time to time, is that I think we do those two things really well. And then we say, okay, we heard you and now we're going to go do this. And it's often what we heard people say, but we don't actually circle back and engage them in that process in the way that we should. And I think, again, the more community champions you can build by including them, truly including them in that process, will just be so much more beneficial in the long run. I think I heard Michael Wagler recently describe placemaking as doing projects with the community and not just for the community. And I think that that's an incredibly important reminder to all of us who do this work pretty regularly, that it's so important to engage people and to have them be part of that process. And by doing that, I think that we will continue to make strides in that equity gap and ensuring that we don't continue to have equity gaps in placemaking.
For sure. Tom, your thoughts on equity in placemaking?
Yeah. Well, a lot of our things, of course, like the amphitheater, a lot of the events there are free or very low cost, and we encourage, our parks is actually department programming that to get all kinds of kids from all walks of life and people involved. Our library, we've just updated our library where we designed a special room for kids. Again, no cost to come in there, and there's, for a junior high age, that's a very difficult age, and reach out to different walks of life. And the Recplex, we have a special needs. We partner with Courage League Sports, which one of the basketball courts, an area in the back of the facility is specially surfaced so accommodate wheelchairs and folks with other, they have to use different things to get around and to meet their special needs. So that's, we wanted to have that. And then we have a scholarship program because like hockey is a very expensive sport. And so we want to make sure we can get kids and introduce hockey to them and other sports, especially if there's an entry level that's too high. So we have that in mind in all these projects that we work on, that how do we broaden that out so so people they can reach and have that attainable to be able to participate.
Most definitely. Okay, well, I want to jump into questions from our audience. As a reminder, you can pop those in the chat if you have other questions that come up. First one I think I'll take because it's a quick one. Is placemaking possible without spending millions of dollars? Absolutely. I think we've gotten some nice examples today that it can be something relatively small, temporary, or it can be those larger projects, but in whatever fits the community. Tom, one for you. Do you have any tricks or advice on how to secure community engagement beyond what we've talked about? Now more than ever, getting people to attend a meeting is a heavy lift. Yeah.
Well, before the pandemic, we went out to them. Our parks and planning departments we'd have little functions in the various parks across the city, and have ice cream socials in this time of the year, and do other things like that. So it's kind of fun. And then we ask their opinions on different issues. But besides just getting a survey call, which again, people are hating to answer phone calls. So it's going out to the public is what I would tell you is the best thing to do, and have something that's fun when they come there. We had games, we had, like I said, some ice cream or other treats for them. And then we had a chance to listen to them. So it's very helpful.
Excellent, thank you. Another question about authenticity being often mentioned in tandem with placemaking. And Rachel, I think it was you who touched on this about genuinely listening and responding, being of and for the community that you're representing. Is there anything that you would add about that authenticity being a barrier, creating challenges, or going hand in hand with the process?
Great question. I think that authenticity can sometimes lead to challenges in terms of placemaking, mostly in the sense that you may not vision it going the direction that you end up, right? And so again, flexibility is key. I think it's important to have processes pulled together to the extent that you can, but I'm a big believer in being flexible for the right opportunity at the right time. And so I just think that it's important, again, to listen to the community to make sure that they're engaged in that discussion. And so then as you hear, that very real advice and take of your community to then adapt however you might need to. And sometimes that creates challenges, right, in how we navigate future planning and even, the efforts that we're currently in the midst of. And so I think that that's really important. But I think that as community members, people want to be a part of that. And so I think that they will embrace, that authenticity, and making sure that your community leaders are being very transparent to that is very important.
Absolutely. Another question is for the whole group. Do you believe that placemaking will not only be physical results within communities, but also transition to virtual reality or non-physical concepts for differentiating or marketing our communities?
I'll jump in. I'm not going to win points for visionary, but no, I don't think that that's what placemaking is. Again, there is a blend between the physical space and the community engagement, the community that is built by being in that space together. So I don't know what that will be called. I'm sure there will be those things, but I don't think that that's the same as actual placemaking.
I will add, we are actually working on a project in Okoboji, the Imagine Iowa Great Lakes project, and we have an artist in residency program this year. They're very early on in developing what that project looks like, but there is some talk about how do we spread that reach. So if you're not able to get to the Okoboji area, are there some different opportunities with streaming to reach that? That team actually one of the team members is in Italy, one is in South Africa, and then one is up in Okoboji. So it's partly responsive to their team. So more to come, Catherine. We can certainly follow up and get you more information on that as that project unfolds. Rachel, you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think that placemaking, as we've talked, is really creating that place where people want to be and be present and be physical. But sometimes that's not possible, as we've seen in the last year. And so I do think that there's an element of placemaking, and I don't know what it looks like, in the future, and if we even call it placemaking or if we call it something else, but, where you're able to showcase those efforts to your broader community, to perhaps people who aren't able to be in person in those spaces, but who are excited to see them and want to actively support them. Just this year, we were, because of the pandemic, had to shift all of our programming, right, to do things differently. And we were able to do, at one point, a drone event footage of our Central Park. And we heard so many comments from people who hadn't been back to the community in the last couple of years, said, wow, that's an amazing project. We had no idea that was happening. And so, while I think that placemaking is very much in person to the extent that it can be, I do think that there's an element that really lends itself well to making sure that community remains engaged outside of the process of building the place, but further past that as well.
Absolutely. Another question, what kinds of experts and consultants do you all engage with to do placemaking better? Surveyors, economists, artists, etc.
Yes, I would say that we do all of those things. I think, we are We are the on the boots workers, but we are not necessarily the experts. We work with the experts to help guide us and direct us very much in terms of, the economic outlook, the artists. I by no means am a public artist or have any idea about any of that. So I think it's really important to engage with a whole variety of folks and consultants to help us make sure that we're doing the best work possible for our communities.
Just to add to that, we, besides the aforementioned list, we enlisted a futurist that I heard at a national conference, and then brought her here, and that was really helpful, because they're looking at the world very differently, and really trying to pull you out of your comfort zones, and it really pushed us, and I think we came up with a very good plan because of that.
And Sally, you added DART as another sort of non-traditional placemaking partner. Are there other organizations you can point to, within Greater Des Moines and Invest DSM?
Yeah, I guess I would say there's not an organization we wouldn't partner with, right? There's so much potential for the intersectionality of arts and culture and whatever you're trying to do. We did a really, someone asked about an ephemeral, sort of a faster, quicker, leaner version. We did a really cool project with Mid-Iowa Health Foundation in October, working on a storytelling project about youth homelessness and trying to elevate the conversation in our community around youth homelessness. So that's another sort of non-traditional place. We ended up doing an installation that was an 8-foot cube of pillows, and it was called the Dream Project. And the story behind it is, if you don't have a safe place to rest your head at night, how can you dream about a future? And so that's a non-traditional placemaking. It moved to different locations, but there's really no one that we wouldn't work with in the community, looking to tell good stories and create that kind of place that makes Des Moines unique and special.
Yeah, it seems to me that's perhaps one of the most exciting things about placemaking, and what makes these projects also unique is that mix of partners and those different perspectives that they then bring into the project. So we're short on time here, but I want to throw out a couple more questions. Next one from our chat: the American Rescue Plan is being negotiated in Congress, with many facets being left out from the original version. What aspects would be most beneficial for placemaking in Iowa? And are there any conversations going with representatives of Iowa on the importance of this bill and what it can mean for Iowans?
Congresswoman Anthony reached out to the city, and I assume she did all the cities she represents, and said, offer some projects that could be, and she gave us kind of parameters. Some of it was like infrastructure projects, others were for like quality of life type projects. So she has reached out to us and asked for candidates for that. And again, yeah, we don't know what's going to go or not, but she at least did that.
So I don't know how specific, but placemaking under the legislation, I've been working closely with my colleagues at the Iowa Arts Council, following this as best we can, but there is a priority to address the negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency. And one of the aspects of that is including speeding the recovery of the tourism, travel, hospitality sectors, and supporting industries particularly hard hit by COVID-19 that are just now beginning to mend. And then it acknowledges similarly impacted sectors in a local area are also eligible for support. So clearly arts, culture, and heritage fits in there. Tourism is a huge part of this. We have to make sure that we understand that this is not only for local residents, but these placemaking projects also have tremendous tourism impacts that are really important, both economically, but also for the future pipeline, talent development pipeline. And so we're looking for all the ways to get in, but there are some very clear paths in the language, as clear as it can be at this stage.
Definitely. Okay, we have about a minute left, so I want to throw out one last question to each of our panelists. What project are you most excited about in Greater DSM?
Well, I'll go first with a non-answer. It's an occupational hazard. I don't get to pick favorites, but I am really excited that Des Moines is reaping some of the benefits of the creative placemaking concept and recognition and awareness that these investments are important to the future of our community, and excited about the opportunities to integrate arts and culture and heritage so that we have more art in more places for more people.
Rachael, I don't expect you to be that even-handed. I fully expect you to pick your favorites in your own communities.
Well, certainly in Grinnell, I'm excited about the Veterans Veterans Artist Memorial Residency. I think that that's going to be a huge thing for our community and something that we've been working on for a number of years now. So exciting to see that happening. I very much do agree, though, with Sally. I think it's just exciting to see placemaking getting so much talk and attention. And I think that in itself will help yield additional dollars and more support of all of these great things that we've talked so much about today. So it's exciting to see placemaking getting the time and attention that it is. And hopefully that in itself will help, propel so many more great projects forward.
Tom.
Yeah, I think looking at the metro region, there's almost every community has something that's exciting that's going on. I think it's going to help everybody raise all boats. We have a number of them, and I just talked about with the city of Des Moines, and there's the water trails that impacts a pretty significant area. I do think water quality is going to be a challenge on that, but I think it's something that is very important. We got two rivers coming through this area. And then also in Des Moines, we're reclaiming the Dyko area. That's an area that's been kind of a space that just nobody wanted to touch, and finally seeing development there. That's good for a central core city. So we all got to look at this regionally, and I do think and with the arts, as Sally said, I've seen that grown so much. I was just eating dinner the other day downtown, and I looked across when I first heard of the talk about the park, the sculpture park. I'm thinking, what? How's that going to work? And of course, my mind wasn't expanded big enough to say, well, look what it's done. It just that piece of green space in the city of Des Moines has done so much. So it doesn't have to be huge spaces. It could be parks. And I think hopefully we integrate nature more into what we're doing and give it some, it gets a lot of attraction too if it's given a chance.
Appreciate all of those comments. I would love to chat about this all afternoon with all of you, but unfortunately not the reality. So would like to thank our panelists for a rich discussion on community placemaking today. And with that, Andrea, can I toss it back to you?
Thank you, Bethany. And you can almost toss it back to me. I want to ask you what you're most excited about for the region too.
I think coming back out of the pandemic, there's this new excitement or the renewed excitement, I guess I would say, about people gathering and using our outdoor spaces more intentionally. And so I'm excited to see that continue throughout all of our communities. And, as I've gone through my career being a big proponent of regionalism. So I'm excited, as Tom said, seeing a rising tide lifts all boats. So I'm especially excited for all of these communities to continue to work together and make DSM even greater than it already is.
Thank you, Bethany. Thank you, Tom, Sally, and Rachael. We really appreciate everyone who was able to join us today. We will be hosting our next forum on August 17th at noon. We'll cover affordable housing during that event, and I believe the registration is up. So get on the dsmpartnership.com website to register for that. While you're there, take a look at the registration for DMDC 2021. Many of you know we've traditionally taken a really large group of our members and investors and community partners to DC in May, but thanks to the events of the last year plus, we are going in September. So mark your calendars for September 22nd through 24th. Registration is open. And if you have questions about that, any other events, or any questions that you'd like us to get answered on the topic of community placemaking, the conversation certainly doesn't end here. So don't hesitate to reach out to those of us at the partnership, myself, Ryan Moon from the public policy team as well. And then lastly, sign up for our public policy newsletter so that you're fully aware of upcoming events and updates as we send that out on a weekly basis. And with that, we'll give everyone a few seconds left in their hour, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone again soon. Have a great rest of the day.